Coming up, Allison Anders joins Illeana in just a minute.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
And now, it's the I Blame Dennis Hopper podcast, starring Illeana Douglas. Eavesdrop with Illeana as she interviews Hollywood's most prominent players about filmmaking, acting, and what really happens on the set of your favorite flicks and TV shows.
Hello, everyone. I am Illeana Douglas. Welcome to the I Blame Dennis Hopper podcast. My lovely co-host, Tamara Bird.
No, you're lovely.
And thanks, everyone, again for all the wonderful comments. And we're getting more and more listeners and watchers, and I really appreciate this. It's great to, I was writing a thank you email to one of our recent guests who is coming up, and I said it's so important to keep these stories alive. These great, the people who actually, I sort of aspire to the Peter Bogdanovich. Not only did he write about these people, but he actually knew them and got kind of the real oral history, and I'm very much about that. And particularly, we're going to be having a female director on today.
Yes.
Also, particularly when it comes to female directors, make sure you write your stories down. And
absolutely, because they're not as prevalent.
That's right.
As the men's stories. I wanted to talk to you about directing in general.
Absolutely.
So you have directed, you've obviously also been directed.
Yes.
And we've talked before on the podcast about how you prefer sort of a calm set as opposed to an adversarial set or an adversarial relationship with.
Yes.
Because some directors do like to create tension, to get what they want.
Yes.
So what is it specifically about like a genial or a comfortable set for you that makes it that way?
Well, it's interesting. Since I come from a history background, what I always read about first in my love affair with the movies was reading about Joe Mankiewicz and Billy Wilder, and boy, it seemed like they had such camaraderie, and the director seemed very much like a father figure, and he fixed everybody's issues. And then when I started working myself, and particularly having somebody like Martin Scorsese as a mentor, the tone that he set, he just was the best audience that there was. He was laughing and encouraging, and he was never negative at all, and so that gave you great confidence, and that for me set the tone. And then when I've gone off to work with other directors, somebody like Gus Van Sant, as I've often said, an understanding and a knowledge of lenses and the technical aspects of it. And some actors aren't interested in that.
Right.
But I was very much interested in that because I thought, well, okay, now that I understand things emotionally, how can I use the camera? And that goes back to my love of Hollywood and having my eye in future directing, but also, these actresses, Joan Crawford and Marlene Dietrich, they knew all the cameras and the lights, and they knew how to make themselves look good. So, I wanted to learn every aspect there was of making a movie. And then through, the collaborations that I've had, and especially with somebody, like Allison, again, it's just being able to have input and just try something. To me, what's sad is that, you're there and it's cost so much money to be there, and you have an idea or somebody has an idea. Well, just try it, as opposed to sometimes directors, no, we have it. It's late, we're moving on.
Right.
And there's a sense of feeling let down and that maybe you're not important. It can just be a set of dominoes,
Right.
to feel as if, your ideas aren't important. And then for me personally, in my own directing, it's been to have all those things to set a tone. But then also as an actor, knowing these little quirks, like it's awful when you get there in the morning and you have to get out of your car and you're lugging your stuff and nobody's helping you and nobody's asking you if you want a coffee. And so I always make sure when I'm doing something, I'm like, now make sure you're there. at the car helping them. And he loves Diet Coke, so make sure you ask him if he has a Diet Coke. And as you know, when we do our podcast,
Yes.
we always have food.
Yes, we do.
Food is very important. We always have, just have fun things on the set, because it's supposed to be fun,
Right.
and it will get stressful as the time, dwindles. But I like people to feel that that they're having a good time. Also, that they can trust me. When we were
Right.
doing Easy to Assemble, sometimes like Ed Begley Jr., who just works, on multiple projects.
yeah.
But I needed him because he was integral to the show. So I'd say to him, Ed, I promise you will be there for 4 hours. You come in. And, we were done with him in under 4 hours. And so I alert the whole team. And that's something you can do in low budget. Again, I personally like to be a mother hen and involved in
Yeah.
what does the art department do?
Yeah.
Why are they painting? And sometimes the producer will be like, Illeana, why don't you just stay out of that?
Oh, that's
but, I know as an actor how much time is crucial. And, and I try to adapt either if somebody has another jobs that we get
Sure.
them in and out, or if somebody really wants to play and experiment, you look at the scenes of the day and you say, okay, where can we buy some time? Where can we lose some time? Where can we do a walk and talk? And that'll cut off 5 pages.
Right.
I mean, for me as a director, since I'm sort of a newbie and I'm going to be directing my first feature, is that idea of, people keep saying to me, you're so ahead of yourself. And I'm like, well, I'm used to low budget where you have to have the scenes and you're deciding, what. So I'm trying to give myself the opportunity to loosen up a little bit. Like it doesn't, that to have some happy accidents, because
Right.
so much of what I have done previously is that we just don't have time. So it all has to be pretty much like, no, we're in this location, we got to be wrapped by 2, let's get out of here. And so I'm hoping with my feature. But then in terms of working with my actors, again, just being very collaborative.
So when you are working with an actor and as a director, but you can also answer this as an actor yourself, how do you deal with it, or what happens when either the director's not getting what they want from you or you're not getting what you want from your actor? I mean, how do you deal with that?
I mean, to me, it's the easiest thing in the world. Just shoot it multiple ways. Like this is the part, now I've got my actor hat on.
Yeah.
The easiest thing in the world is just to shoot it.
Right.
Not in the time you're standing there, and that's probably, back from my Marty days, is just shoot it. Just go, absolutely, and when you're in the editing room 3 months from now, he may be right, he may be wrong, but just shoot it. It's just quicker to, I find it's quicker to just shoot it rather than have an argument about it.
Right.
Unless you're up against the clock and it's lunchtime.
Right.
But casting, and so many directors have said this, casting is so crucial to understand, are you on the same page? I know when we did the last season of Easy to Assemble, I was very, very, very intent on having Roger Bart in the lead to play my romantic leading interest, because I was transitioning from, this other actor, and so we just talked about what I wanted him to do, but he already encompassed for me the essence of what I wanted.
Which is why you gave him the job in the first place, right?
Exactly. But then there were the added fun things like, why do you want me in this loud sports coat? And I said, because you're Walter Matthau. So you have that fun intimacy. Yeah. And that's something, again, that, that I had with Allison on Grace of My Heart, where some of it is like really pure and actory, and some of it is like, come on, I'm Judy Garland here. This is, where you're having some fun.
Yes, John.
2 questions.
Yeah, sure.
First one.
Absolutely.
Can you name a few directors that you thought set a great set, that create the, I know you've already said Martin, but just name a few that you really thought.
I had a very small part, which I did kind of as a favor to the great Robert Redford. And I have to say, just even being on his set for one day and watching him give direction to Ralph Fiennes, and for fun, I think he gave me a couple things to do. But he was just a brilliant director. I did, when I worked for, I had, again, a one-day job working for, Woody Allen. I found it really painstaking because he didn't say anything. And I was the opposite of Marty, who was so encouraging and laughing and doing,
But was it Robert's notes that were so specific, or that
just
made it?
environment?
The environment was great, but he'd come over and he'd say, Ralph, why don't you try this, try that. And most
Give
times...
you some nuance.
Exactly. I haven't had too many directors say, try this, try that. It's mainly been like, they see what I do and then they maybe adjust it. And then on the bigger scale, somebody like, who I work with, Frank Marshall, on the set of Alive, to tame a bunch of youngsters who were living on a mountain for 4 months. I mean, he and Kathleen Kennedy have so much respect for, because again, they created an environment where, we literally would have jumped off a mountain for them. We love them so much.
The follow-up is,
yeah.
Were those kinds of sets and those kinds of directors ones that got the best performance out of you, or do you think there are...
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
I've never worked with a director that, shuts you down or yells at you and doesn't and gets something good out of you. Right. For me personally, it doesn't work. And I had an experience once with a director, and we should have him on so I won't say his name, but it was a somewhat of a troubled set, even though it was a comedy. So that's my only hint. But but he yelled at me a couple times, and then I pulled him aside and I said, the yelling thing just doesn't, it's not going to work. I said, that kind of like Jerry Lewis, what are you, an idiot? Kind of thing. You schmuck. I said, it doesn't work for me. It just is not, it's not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
And then later on, then he told me his feeling. He goes, my feelings were really hurt.
His feelings were hurt.
I know.
For you mentioning that he yelled at you.
Yeah.
Okay.
He said, you really hurt my feelings when you said that. I was like, well, what about, you really hurt my feelings? I'm like, all right. Hugs and kisses back to the... But that's how a movie
and his initials are.
Yeah, right?
We'll have him on.
Can't wait to talk about him. I can't
and
wait to find out who it is.
And then you have somebody like Peter Bogdanovich, who just, in between, he's very gentle. That was like a wonderful experience working with him. Marvelous, darling, marvelous. You remind me of, and then he tells some story. So that was, he was great. But I've had, pretty good experiences of working with, directors. A couple TV directors hasn't been easy. Just again, I think the pressure of time.
Yep. Yeah.
has made them be sharp, and you think you're doing something really funny, and they're like, and they're
just watching the clock tick by.
Yeah, and they don't like it. And then again, I've had the wonderful experience. He'd be another good person to have on, like John McNaughton, where he he wanted me desperately to be in this movie with Richard Dreyfuss, and then once I was in it, I said, I'm not right for this movie because I can't do a Jewish accent. I said, everyone thinks I'm Jewish. I'm actually Italian. But he put me in the movie, and then they cut too big on the set. And he goes, you sound like Barbra Streisand. Like, what are you doing with that accent?
I'm doing Barbra Streisand. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. That's really so supportive. But we had a great relationship, but it was funny. I was like, okay, I can't. Now I'm permanently funny. I'm like, I just felt like I made a pot roast. I made a terrific pot roast. And Richard Dreyfuss was in. Anyway, enough about me.
Bring
Let's
Allison
talk about
in. Let's
the great Allison Anders, who is, of course, a writer-director. She's also a winner of a Peabody Award. Yeah. My God, and the Genius, MacArthur Genius Grant, director of My Vida Loca, Border Town, Sugar Town, Grace of My Heart, Things Behind the Sun, of course, on so many things on television too. It's so funny. We've been friends for so long.
So long.
I
I love you too.
You're the best.
You are.
You got a whole chapter in your book devoted to you. Because when I was writing the book, my editor, I had a chapter on directors, and then he said, I find it very sexist, like this thing that you're talking about. This, I said, because the relationship with the director, I said, it's very sort of symbiotic, very, it's like you're in bed together.
Yeah.
And he didn't like that, and so it sort of hurt my feelings. So then I wrote an entire chapter on you. And what a great experience. I was like, well, if you'd let me get to the finish, but so I said, well, screw it, I'm just going to do a whole chapter. So
but it is that, as we talked about recently, you know, that it's like this very intimate, such an intimate relationship.
I think it is. And it was, didn't you mention briefly the director Michael Lindsay Hogg? I know we're getting off topic.
That was so great, because my son had voiced in this group setting that he was, that he had come to one of my sets and that he found it really confusing and even a little hurtful that, like, my actors were connecting with me like I was their mother, you know, that they were really close to me, and he was feeling a little displaced. And Michael Lindsay Hogg just did this wonderful thing where he told Ruben, he says, you know, we share special relationships with our actors and with our crew, and, you know, it's a very intimate situation. He said, but there is never a time when the director doesn't know that he or she is returning home to their family and to their loved ones and who those people are. Now, there probably are directors who do lose sight of that. But for the most part, for the most part, we really do remember who our family is, who our husband or wife is, who our loved ones are, our lovers. You know, so, it was really great. He really set Ruben, you know, set him right with this, which is great.
I think it is. It's, you know, they set the tone. But I was saying at the top with a director like Frank Marshall, I said, you know, we would have literally jumped off a mountain for Frank Marshall. We loved him that much because, you know, not only was he a great director, but he just made things fun for us.
That's so great.
You know. Especially in such a grueling environment for you all. That's
he would do
really
magic show, every kooky thing in the book. But anyway,
so good.
So let's go back, because we've always from when we first met in the 90s. My God.
Yeah.
We bonded about music and movies. And what do you remember? I don't know if I've ever asked you what the first movie you ever saw was.
The very first movie I saw was in the movie theater. Was King Solomon's Mines. Now, why that was in the movie theater at that time is still confusing to me, because it would have been, I think the movie was made the year I was born, so it would have been like 3 years later that I would have seen it. I think I was about 3 years old. And I remember seeing it and it affecting me. The next movie that I saw was El Cid by Anthony Mann. So, and I loved that. And I was 5, so I couldn't really identify with the characters. So I made Sophia Loren my mother. And the other woman, I can't remember who that was, but she was a fair-skinned woman. I made her my aunt. So, you know, so my mother's always like, oh, Sophia Loren, you know.
That's funny.
And then later, probably the most important movie to me was watching on TV a film that really affected everything, which was A Stolen Life by Curtis Bernhardt directed it, but Bette Davis was really sort of the auteur of the whole thing. It was her first movie as producer at Warner's and with her production company, and she got the writer, and she got Glenn Ford, who was unknown at the time, to be her male lead, and the film just really, you know, it kind of informed my ideas on romantic life, for better or for worse. It made me glad I was not a twin, or at least her twin. It did a lot. In fact, you know, so I didn't see it again. I fell in love with it, didn't see it again till I was like 14, smoking dope in my bedroom. And then I was like, oh my God, there's that movie I've been looking for forever. Because we couldn't just access these films then. You had to wait for them to magically be programmed somewhere. So
And then were there actresses that you liked too? Did you so were you emulating trying to? I always, which I wrote about in my book, which was weird. I emulated and wanted to be friends with the men in the movie.
Right.
So like
right.
Richard Dreyfuss was my
Right.
friend.
Right,
You know,
exactly.
I was gonna marry Lee Marvin.
Exactly.
Or, it was like
I love
totally
that.
bizarre. I dressed like Joseph Cotton in The Third Man. You know,
So good.
and I don't know why I found women later. I always,
Yeah.
I don't know why, but it was like in the movies, I just felt like those were, like, they'd be my buddies, you know?
Right,
And then
right.
later on, I discovered, like, the women and Joan Crawford and musicals and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I guess I did really identify with Betty Davis. I mean, in watching Feud recently, you know, which was just
I know, so good.
yummy. God, I loved it so much.
Yeah.
I'm grieving for it now.
Yeah.
But that reminded me how much she affected me. And I have to say that even when I've worked a few times on the Warner Studios, you know, I'll be on one of those sound stages and look up and go, Betty was here, you know. She was looking up at the same rafters I'm looking at, you know. I mean, it's just wonderful, you know. And so I think she was somebody who was really important. And then when I became a teenager, I mean, that was like an explosion of these kind of amazing women. So, you know, I loved Julie Christie. I loved this woman who's now, thank God, she's become my friend just magically. But Hillary Thompson was her name, and she was in all these kind of, like, she was in Model Shop.
Oh, yeah.
She was in Where Angels Go, Trouble Follows, you know, which was a favorite of mine. And she was just somebody. She was in particular a farce with James Garner and Debbie Reynolds called How Sweet It Is. And she played a character named Bootsy. And she was just like my dream. I was like, oh my God, if I had just had this girl's life, you know,
Yeah.
everything would be great. And then I found out that she kind of had a similar life to me. But, you know,
so
there the
interesting.
connection. Yeah. So years later, we randomly kind of met, not in the business at all. And but she was somebody who was sort of like this touchstone for me, you know. And again, I thought, yeah, she could be my friend, you know.
And then something when it actually works,
Yeah.
you can't let them know. 'Cause
Yeah, for sure.
But it took me years to, you know, as I said, when I wrote the thing about Richard Dreyfuss, you know.
Yeah.
He's like, it was actually very touching because he said that's how I felt about Jimmy Stewart. And then it made me, again,
nice.
feel confident that these things are passed on, you know.
For sure.
Filmmaker and
Totally.
you know, and actor. And then you also, of course, love music. So then where is the music coming in?
Well, that's kind of amazing. I mean, I grew up in a family where music was kind of everything. So movies
And this
too.
is in Kentucky?
In Kentucky, yeah. So my mother played guitar. She wrote songs. My cousin ended up. We all lived together in a house. The two sisters were divorcees, and so we all lived together. And my mom taught him to play guitar, and now he's just like this genius, absolute genius guitar player. And then so there was music around all the time, and then the Beatles came along, of course, like a lot of people, you know, that had like just this insane impact on me. I bought a couple of records. My first record was Johnny Get Angry by Joni Summers that I bought at 45, and she sings, well, the best lyric in it is, I want a brave man, I want a caveman. So I was always like, auspicious beginning for a feminist filmmaker, but it told a story for me. So this was kind of the amazing thing, was that I felt like Paul McCartney, like he wrote these great female characters like Eleanor Rigby, and She's Leaving Home, and just these amazing, even for No One, I always feel like he was the guy being dumped, but he wrote it from her point of view, you know, and it's kind of, so and he continues to write songs from this female perspective, or like with a woman character. So I feel like I learned to write about female characters in a weird way through Paul McCartney songs. And then and then the other thing was the girl group stuff from the Brill Building, which really had this huge impact. And in particular, the Shangri-Las, which mostly, most of that stuff was written by Ellie Greenwich and Jeff Barry. They kind of discovered them. And there was a lot of, like, Mary Weiss, who was the lead singer, was just she was beautiful, and she was kick-ass, and she was she could do these haunting inner monologues, like these voiceovers of, like, the characters' inner monologues. So again, it was this storytelling, but now it was like this female voice. So I always felt like those things combined to kind of help me start to put together female stories. Mary Weiss's delivery of these inner monologues, and then Paul's characters, and the characters in the Shangri-La songs too, which are kind of amazing.
So was there ever a thought of being a music writer, or did being a filmmaker come to you?
Yeah, I could never. I just didn't
I could see
have
you
it.
Oh, you just
Yeah,
did you try to write
didn't
songs?
have it. Yeah, I tried to write songs. Could not do it. I wrote poetry. Could not write a song. I could kind of sing, but I really didn't know how to make that my own. But with writing, I really knew from day one, like the very first thing I ever wrote, it was like mine. You know, if I went back and read it now, I'd be like, well, that's me. You know, that's totally my perspective. So I feel like it really, so then I had a child later, and she's a musician. So there you go.
And did you have somebody? It's in the genes.
That's why we have them.
And did you have somebody? I was very lucky to have, as I've said before, my grandparents were very. I would be writing little poems, and nobody cared less. But my grandparents, I'd write them little letters and I'd put in poems. And I remember that was my first inkling of my grandmother said, this is really well written. And when I'd come to visit, I'd start to recite it, things. So it gave me a great deal of confidence. So did you have anyone like that who said?
Yeah, my mom was really great. My mom would put together little books of my poems. And she really encouraged my writing. And then later I had boyfriends that encouraged it, which was really good. Yeah, you just got to keep doing it. Because soon I'm going to dump you, and you're going to really need those poems.
And where are they now? So then, how did you find your way to? You went to film school here in California. And how'd you find your way there?
Well, it's kind of crazy. I always tell people, you kind of can't get here from where, if you look at it on paper, it makes no sense. But so I went to England. I lived there in 1973, and then I came back pregnant, had my baby, and I was waitressing. I mean, she was newborn, and I had to go back to work, and I was waitressing, and I realized, oh my God, that welfare takes out every single thing that I have. Everything I make, they take away. So why am I working? This makes no sense. I should just stay home with my baby and not pay a babysitter. And
Right.
So I stayed home with her, and then I discovered that I could I was a high school dropout, and I discovered that I could go back to school, to junior college, without having a diploma. And that I was eligible for all this financial aid that welfare could not touch. So it made sense then to go back to school, because I could survive, So so I went back to school. I worked on writing at first. I did that for a couple of years, and then I had a second baby, and then during that period, when I was home with her and Tiffany, I just started writing a book about rock and roll movies, and or teen movies, all the stuff that I was kind of obsessed with. And at the end of that 2 years, I had the book. It didn't get published, but then I knew what I wanted to do. I was like, all right, I want to write about movies. So I go back to school and I go, I want to go to UCLA and write about movies. And they were like, okay, here's all the requirements you have. Plunk. This huge stack of requirements to even apply to UCLA Film School. So then I did that, applied, got in, and then once I was there, I was like, well, maybe I have to write a script to complete the program, and I have to make a film. Let's see if I like either one. So I just loved it. I mean, I loved. I was tortured by making my first movie, tortured, and yet I was like, once it was done, I was like, I'm intoxicated by this. I don't ever want to do anything else. I love this kind of storytelling. It just sent me, and I loved writing scripts too, but making the film was really, from my own script was really kind of
Lost Highway.
No, it was actually it was a little film called Nobody Home, and it won the best first film of that year at UCLA. And but then I also wrote this Lost Highway project, which is not to be confused with the David Lynch movie that was made. Very different. But I did have the title first, I think.
You did.
Well, it was an old rockabilly song. But so I wrote that script. I entered 3 contests. I entered one that was the Nissan Focus Awards, and they sent me back a rejection and said, not only did you not win, but here's a list of screenwriting books you should probably read.
Wow.
Yeah.
So not only you didn't win, but you suck? Is that what you were saying?
Exactly.
Great.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that was really good.
That's super nice.
And then I won the other 2. Well, what I did do, though, was I have to say that in between the Focus Award and the other 2, I got sober. And then I got the character in my script sober. And remarkably, the narrative worked a million times better then. The stakes were higher, and everything just kind of worked. So I won the Nickel Fellowship, which was brand new at the time. It was the first year. And then I won the Sam Goldwyn Award, the top prize of that. So that kind of, I left college. So that was my leaving college. I left college with $25,000, which in 1986 was a lot of money for someone that had been, on welfare for years and was a single mom. So that was kind of amazing. Then I got an agent. But meanwhile, before I even graduated, Kurt Voss and Dean Lent and I had made a feature in film school.
Right.
Called Border Radio, which is on Criterion Collection. My only film that I've been able to get on Criterion Collection.
We're going to get Grace of My Heart on there.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
With the additional scenes, but we'll get to that.
Yes.
We'll get to that.
Yes. Susan, are you listening? We're coming at you. So we did Border Radio through the help of this wonderful man, Billy Woodbury, wonderful filmmaker, did this beautiful film, Bless Their Little Hearts. And he just said, you guys need to make a feature, because he had seen the second films that we had made at UCLA, and they all had a similar kind of tone. They were in black and white, and so he helped us, because he worked in the tech office, so he would help us. He would just give us the equipment to use, and he was just a tremendous support. And so we made Border Radio. It actually got sold. It went to 5 theaters, 5, and we got ripped off. But it was kind of an amazing experience, because it was the LA punk scene, and it was we roped all these people into the movie, and John Doe. And
did you have any shooting? Did you have any technical disasters, or did you kind of know what you were doing?
Oh my God! We really didn't. We had no clue. We were our only crew for the most part. I mean, occasionally some film student friend of ours would come and work.
Yeah.
We'd leave the film we'd shoot, then we'd have no money to get it out of the lab. And we were vultures. I mean, we found out that one guy got like this grant in the philosophy department, and we saw him waiting for a bus, and we gave him a ride. And then started saying, we can't get our film out of the lab. And he like goes, well, I could probably help. You know, so, I mean, we were terrible.
That's
we were
amazing.
just awful. But,
so when you were in there, I know one of the people that when did he become a mentor for you, Wim Wenders?
Oh, well, before I even went to UCLA, I started writing him fan mail. So
how'd you get his address?
Well, it's incredible. So what I did was I saw Lightning Over Water. Well, first I had read about him, and I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I want to do.
Yeah.
Exactly how he was approaching character and everything. And then I saw a couple of films, and it wasn't quite what I was expecting. Mm-hmm. But then I saw Lightning Over Water, which is an odd movie that he made, but with Nicholas Ray and Ronnie Blakely, and who was his wife at the time. And so I just, something about it, I just went, oh my God, he is it. He's like, you know, so I wrote him a letter, and I made him a tape of girl group music, which everyone thought was really weird, because they were like, he's a director, and everybody thought about directors back then as like old men with beards, you know. Yeah. And I go, no, he's a young director. He's a cool director. And they're like, I don't know. So I called the DGA, got his agent contact, sent the letter and the girl group tape to the agency. It was the Paul Connor agency, I remember. I'll never forget. And then after a week passed, he didn't write back. So I was like, well, I'm going to call and make sure that letter got there. So I called them, and they said, oh, yeah, we probably sent it on to him in New York, to his home. And I said, oh, okay, good. So then I called information, 411, baby. He was listed with his address. So I called up my boyfriend, Kurt Voss, at the time, and I go, I've got his phone number. And he goes, oh my God, you're going to have to call him. So I call him up, and I go, hi, is this Wim Wenders, the filmmaker? And he was like, well? And I said, well, I'm Allison Anders. I sent you a letter. And he goes, oh, yeah, the big one. So he's talking to me. He just starts talking. And he goes, he says, and thank you very much for the girl group tape. I really enjoyed that. So he says, well, he was like watching football, he told me. So he said, well, Allison, I don't write letters very often, but if you want to keep writing to me, you can.
Wow. And
I said, should I send it to your agent? And he says, no, send it to my house. Oh, my. So he got a letter every week.
Wow.
Bigger and bigger and bigger. And then...
what sorts of things would you write in your letters to him?
Well, this is the funny thing. People always think I was trying to get a job. I was not. I wanted him to know about me.
Right.
You know, I wanted to be seen.
Yeah,
I wanted to be seen. I wanted to, so I talked
He's
about
an
my
artist,
children.
You're an artist. Yeah.
I talked about movies I had seen. I talked about music. I talked about friends. I talked about my family, my weird childhood, and you know, I just talked about whatever, you know, and so it became pretty amazing. I mean, believe it or not, he still has all of those letters. His marvelous, sweet wife, Donata, cataloged them all for me. And she was like, how could anybody get rid of them? They're so beautiful. So sweet. So he really came. So what happened was I got into UCLA, and he finally wrote back. And he goes, congratulations. He sent me a congratulatory postcard. And then when I went to make my very first movie, the Super 8 movie, 16 Sound, that won the award, he read my script. And he calls me up and he goes, I want to give you feedback on your script. And then he's like, you know, well, you should not do that. How are you going to do these dissolves? And I said, I'm going to do them in the camera because you could do them. And he was like, oh, no, that's very risky. And so he gave me all this feedback on my Super 8 film that I was about to make. So I made the film, and then one day he calls me and he goes, Allison, it's Vim. I'm coming to Los Angeles. I wonder if you can find time to show me your film.
Wow.
So, and he says, and you can get together your friends you've told me about if they want to show me their films too. So I bought a new dress. I waited. And he descends down the steps at Melnitz Hall. It was like amazing. So he sees the films, he looks at me and he goes, he looks at the dissolves and he goes, very risky. And he goes, but beautiful. So then I tell him, I said, well, I won this grant. And he says, oh, congratulations. And I said, yeah, it's to study under you on Paris, Texas. So, because I had lied my ass off and said that he had invited me to get the grant. Oh. So he looks at me, he gets this faraway look and he goes, well, I guess you're going to have to come. And then I said, well, these two guys won the award too. So out of 4 of these President's Undergraduate Fellowships, we won 3 of the 4. And we went off to Paris, Texas to study with him. And so he really mentored me along. I mean, he gave me this opportunity to run lines with Harry Dean Stanton, and that was amazing.
Yeah, that's so incredible. You know, it's funny. Last week I was talking to Joe Dante and talking about working for Roger Corman. And
those guys working with him. Yeah,
you know, and having that mentorship. And I'm going to ask you the same question. Like, whenever anyone talks about the past in filmmaking, they always talk about this accessibility with other directors and having mentors. But how does someone find a mentor today? Of course, you can email people, but it feels like it's not quite the same.
Well, I think that this is such a good question, because I think that people like love to talk about mentorship in this very organized way, and that's just nonsense. That's not really how it works for artists.
Right.
You know, I'm not going to go, I'm available to mentor anyone. No. I had to make girl group tapes every week.
Yeah.
I had to be, I did crazy stuff to get my mentor.
Right. You were passionate.
Yeah. You have to be passionate. You have to connect with that person. And you can't be seeking out, as a filmmaker, you can't be seeking out someone to mentor. The mentee has to come to you. They have to respond to you in a way, being like, that is the person I need to learn from. Because that's the person that speaks to me, that's going to help me create my vision. So I think that if you get someone like that, it's not to open yourself up to crazies, although Vim was very brave, let's just say that. Recently we did an interview and he goes, let's face it, Allison, you kind of stalked me. And I go, well, I did a little, but
hey, you have to.
But it worked. It really worked. And he knew that ultimately it was that I was going to become a filmmaker, or he was going to beat my ass.
Yeah.
It was that kind of a thing. And at the end of Paris, Texas, at the end of the wrap party, I said, I'm going to, what? He said this thing to me that I put in Grace in My Heart, that Matt Dillon says to Denise, to you. And it's, he said, sometimes I look at you and I see you as this old woman in the future who's done all these amazing things. And he said, so I said, well, I'm going to try and use everything that you taught me. And he says, well, you better. I'm really counting on it. And I knew that there was things I was learning on Paris, Texas that I wouldn't be able to use for years.
Right.
But after that, we were on our way. I was making border radio. So, that mentorship, I took a quarter off from UCLA from the program and went and worked with him, and it was gold.
It's so interesting because it reminds me of what I wrote about in the book, is that when I went to Sundance, and then we're going to talk about gas food lodging now, and that was the experience. I was in my mid-20s, so I saw gas food lodging, and it was not, not to knock fried green tomatoes, but it was not, the woman's film really needed a kind of a reboot. It was sort of stuck a little bit. And when I saw gas food lodging, that's what I said, I don't know who this Allison Anders is, but somehow I've got to meet her and I have to work with her. And I think that you need to have that, like, I don't care what it takes, but she knows me and I know her, and by seeing it, and it's just an organic knowing.
That is so it, Illeana. That is so it. I'm so touched. Every time that you say that, I got to tell you.
No, I'm telling you, and it was
me,
the whole movie.
The
whole movie, I was thinking that, but when it came to the sex scene where they go to the, I'm trying to recall it. It's like the cave. The cave, and there's like the lights and stuff. I said she knows. She's like inside me. I know this. I know this person. Like, this person is me on the screen. And I hadn't seen that before. And I remembered, again, going home and telling Marty Scorsese, that, like, I'm telling you, this woman's incredible. Because it was also different than it. And then, like, it wasn't the traditional, like, the girl wants to get married. And how's she going to juggle her career and her this? And then later, as we got to know each other, it combined the love of films and the melodrama and cirque and all of that. So gas food lodging, where does that, obviously, it has very personal, which all your movies are very personal. And where does gas food lodging sort of come from in your brain?
Well, it's weird because it actually is one of the few movies that came outside, because it was originally a book and then it was a script. And a guy that I knew at film school, he wasn't in the film school, but he would kind of come and hang out, and I had met him because he knew I was a fan of Wim Wenders. And so I was always a little perplexed by him, because I thought, what does he think I can do for him? Introduce him to Wim Wenders? I can't do anything for him. And then years later, he's doing something for me, So, so after the awards, after I graduated with the awards, Border Radio had come out and kind of gone away. And he came to me with this. He was working with these guys. They had been working at New World with Roger Corman. They started their own company, Cineville, and he came to me with this project. He came to me with the book and the script. And I was recovering from this weird little surgery at the time, and it was like I was in my bed reading the book, the script and the book, and I was like, I can't believe I didn't write this. This is like kind of my own life in a way. And then I was like, okay, so now I want to go in there and make it mine, So it was, there's really not much left from the book and the original script, except that there was a single mom with some teenage daughters. And so she had 3. I got rid of 1. I was like, 2's enough.
Believe me.
And I gave the mom a sex life. And
which I loved.
Yeah, I was just like, why are moms just moms?
Yes.
Let's give her something.
This is coming out of a period of again, that period where it was like E.T. and the moms like weren't engaged anymore.
No, they were like, leave it to Beaver.
Yeah,
they really were.
The kids were doing everything, or the crazy dad was doing everything. So I love that she was engaged with her, with her kids.
Yeah. And fighting with them and loving them and them calling her on her shit and her calling them on their, so I just went for it and just really made it mine, to the point that my mother was like totally confused. She was like, I think the book Brooke is, you know, I know that Brooke is me, and then, but I don't really think that I don't think that you were that much of a bitch, you know? And I was like, you know, Mom, they're all me. I gotta tell you, they're actually all me. But I did use stuff from my kids to where my kids were like, my two daughters were like, you know, kind of irritated by the fact that I had stolen their scenes, you know, the scenes that they were into, you know, but nobody's safe with a writer.
And the men are always very, even though it's another thing I like about your movies is even though it's a sort of a woman's movie is that the men are always very interesting. They're sort of like they were Mark Ruffalo before there was a Mark Ruffalo. They're
true.
Like, sexy but arty.
Yeah, totally.
You know,
totally.
The perfect guy for, you know, someone who's an artist. So in terms of casting and finding these guys and writing these guys, did guys appeal to that?
They really did. I mean, it's amazing to me how many guys came in for the Darius character, how many people. The harder character was the character that blessedly was played by James Brolin because he wouldn't have been on anybody's radar for that type of a role ever. You know, we went out to The Usual Suspects on that part, and it, you know, they were sick of doing it, you know, predictably. So for James Brolin, he was excited to do something different, you know. So he was just wonderful. And then with the guys too, it was like there was a lot of people that I saw. There were already people. We were early in the indie film movement as we knew it in the 90s, but it's still, there were already still people that were playing these certain parts over and over again. So the idea was to kind of flip that a little bit so that it wasn't the same people over and over again, even as much as I liked them, you know, it was like, let's not do that. And with the girls, it was, I already knew Brooke and I cast her, and then with, and I knew Ione a little bit, which was great. I mean, I saw everybody for that part and for Shade. I mean, everyone that's like an Empire now, they came in. They came in for one of those two roles, you know. So it was amazing. I mean, it was great.
You mentioned before this for me represents again the sweet spot of independent filmmaking and you know how important first of all was Sundance at this time. I mean in terms of meeting other filmmakers, you know, feeling like you've arrived, feeling like there were going to be opportunities for you.
Well, that was amazing. Sundance 92, that early 90s Sundance was heaven. Yeah. It really was. I mean, it was hard. It was really hard. I just come from the Sundance lab, workshopping Mi Vida Loca with the wonderful Angel, got an Angel credit on Mi Vida Loca, Michelle Satter. You know, I worked with all these amazing writers, Walter Bernstein, and all these just fantastic people, Kit Carson, who I'd known on Paris, Texas. And then I go to the festival, and that was kind of this mind-spinning kind of a thing. But it was amazing because, you know, I knew of Quentin. I had heard about him, Quentin Tarantino, that is. And I knew everyone was very excited about him and excited about Reservoir Dogs, but I had never seen him, and I just thought he was going to be this gigantic, macho, you know, action-y. I don't know what I thought he was going to be, but it certainly wasn't the person that I met who comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, are you Allison? Hey, I really loved Gas Food Lodging. I'm Quentin." I was like, whoa! I couldn't believe. So we became fast friends there. It was really, really fun. Yeah. Like hanging out with him, and we're still very warm buddies, you know, and so, but it was an amazing thing to connect with other filmmakers there, and to and even then there were forces trying to divide that energy, you know, because you are in competition for this prize that, of course, most of the filmmakers don't care about. Well, they didn't then. I wouldn't say they go to Sundance not caring now.
Yeah.
But at that time, we were just trying to be like, oh my God, there's another filmmaker like us, you know? Greg Araki and Chris Munch and, you know, Alex Rockwell. And I mean, it was really wonderful. And it was like a support beyond belief. You know. And
was there a moment, because I recall a moment, again, like, you know, I did this movie with Richard Glatzer and called Grief, and then, you know, my agents were horrified. And then, but it brought me to Sundance, and which is, I wanted to be at Sundance because I said I want to be with the hip kind of independent filmmakers.
For sure.
And did you have that same feeling of like, well, I don't really want to make studio films, I want to make
hip? Absolutely. I mean, in fact,
even though there's a sacrifice with the money.
There is a sacrifice, but my God, I mean, for me, even the little bit of money I was making was so much better than what I had been doing that it was...
Better than waitressing.
Yeah, it was like, it was so much better. It was like, I'll never go on welfare again. And I didn't, thank God. But it was really like that was a commitment. It was like, and it was a commitment against so many kinds of movies. Movies that I actually like now, but it's like, there's no way I would let a Merchant Ivory movie in front of my eyes. I was just like, oh, that's like those, what do they call them? Prestige art films, you know? And so we were even against that. I mean, that's how hardcore we were. We were even against prestige art films. You know, that were too glossy and too pretty and too, you know, mannered. And now, like I said, I've had this renaissance privately of my own of just enjoying those movies. But we had we weren't dogma about it. We weren't like Dogma, but we had very big rules about what we were into and what we were about. And I don't honestly see that now. I mean, I'm maybe out of the loop, but no, I don't see that there's a sense of anything.
I don't see a club of filmmakers that were at the top of their game in that way. And that, because it's, to me, around the 2003 is when everything sort of starts to break up. Because at that point, even, and, you know, I made this documentary called Everybody Just Stay Calm. You even knew the distributors. Like, you knew Michael Barker. You know, IFC was starting. You actually knew these people. And in that sense, it harkens back to things that Marty had said to me, where you knew the names of you knew Terry Simmel, and you knew, you know, Tom Pollock, and you knew the actual heads of the studio. So coming out of there, and then of course you do My Vida Loca, which is another personal story, and and at that point we had met and we were developing. I know we don't have enough time. We could do a 6-hour mini.
I know, we totally could.
The movie that's real life, that's a movie that's within a movie, that's an enigma that became my life. No. But so we had met, which in a 50s diner, which is so funny.
Ray's coffee shop. Woohoo, it's still there.
Thank God. To talk about a collaboration, which I always tell people is so shocking, which was going to be a biopic on Anne Sexton.
Right.
I don't know why we thought that would be a good idea, but
I was
really into. You know, remember, I'm you, but like I was 10 years behind. So like you were probably already over the bell jar and Anne Sexton, and I'm just kind of like, I'm just discovering what it's all about.
Totally.
So I was really into Anne Sexton. I really, and I did, in fact, at the time, I really wanted to I was obsessed with that story, and I thought it was so interesting. But we ran into issues with that. But every time we get together, we would talk about music and movies, and out of that came, you know.
Which is so amazing, isn't it?
Because
it just, I remember that when I was in film school, I wanted to do a movie about the Shangri-Las, but I realized I don't have what I need to make that movie. But it was always in the back of my head, that Brill Building world. But it was so great when I kind of thought maybe this could work, and that you and Marty too, having tried to make the Lieber and Stoller story himself, which he should still do.
And working at the time.
And you guys met at the Brill Building.
We met at the Brill Building. I was working at the Brill Building. I was obsessed with girl groups. This is like also when Rhino Records was coming out. And I'm discovering all this stuff and reading all the liner notes and being really into it. But this is, but of course, the $64,000 question going back in time is like, how on earth did you trust me? Did I convince you? Because that's what I always think. But then you tell me about Wim Wenders, and it's the same thing. Because I always think, how on earth did I trick Allison to make a movie with me?
Are you kidding?
Where we get to wear fun clothes and sing songs and do all that. And so that's what I always think is amazing, is that you kind of trusted me that we could actually do this collaboration.
Oh God. And was I ever right? I mean, it's just so incredible. Like when I look at every scene in the movie that we made, I just go, I just can't believe that she gave it up for me. She just gave it up, and that's what you crave, as a director, as someone that trusts you and gives you. I mean, every time I think about that scene at the place where I won my first waitressing job was at this place in the valley, and we shot outside at that creepy little swimming pool at that motel, and the scene with you and John Turturro, where you have the just breakdown and rage out, and it's just so amazing to me.
Yeah, it was perfect because again, the movie was, I think I was, 29 at the time or something. So it was like everything, it was literally everything up to my life in that scene. Like that's what was so interesting. And it was, I look back on it now 20 years later, but wanting to be an actress, it was everything I wanted to do in a movie. I was like, I'd love to put my whole shitty life into one movie, and then close the door on it. And then, you could look back 50 years later, 20 years later, and look, and you look at the movie and you see, there were certain things that were very cathartic that I was able to close the door on in the film, and there were other things that I didn't understand that later became true. And then that's the weird, mystical, magical part of making a movie that I think happens to people. There's something about making a film and putting your life on film that is it's interesting because you can look back and it's like a whole movie.
And it kind of it also does a weird thing of like, if you're writing from intuition like that and you're making a movie from intuition like that, as we did as partners together on this, it's like you better be careful what you're putting up there because it'll probably come true. And I'll never forget one moment came true for me, which was, someone I was in love with, like I found out while I was cutting the movie, was moving away with his family. And I was just like, I found out from someone reading it to me over the phone in from the trades. And I had to go into work and work on that scene in Grace of My Heart. And I remember Thelma turning around looking at me, and I was just a wreck. I was I was like shell-shocked that this had come true, exactly as it was in the movie. And Thelma turned around, looked at me, and she goes, "This is really weird, Allison. This is really, really weird."
No, there's so many things. And so now, of course, getting involved, our executive producer, Martin Scorsese, and knowing at the time that he and I are involved, do you have any trepidation about that? I mean, I feel like I'm going to answer for you that you don't, which you should have, but I always felt that we were so able to I had so much respect for him, so much respect for you, that I was very much able to compartmentalize it. The only one who was worried was him, but I feel like that, it never really came up in an odd way.
No, and I never really, I never worried about it. There was only a time, but I worry in post anyways, always. Like there was a time right when we finished the movie, and you and I were both completely worn out.
Oh my God.
We were so worn out. We were both insane.
Yeah.
At the time.
Definitely.
We were just both kind of, I remember I went on a road trip with Devin, my daughter. I was just like, I just got to drive, And so, but there was only one moment where I thought, oh, maybe this film will be totally out of my hands now. I don't know, And of course, miraculously, that not only didn't happen, but that he said, come to New York and, I'll let you work with this woman. And I was like, oh, okay, great. And then I was like, wait a minute, what woman? That woman?
Yeah.
With Thelma. So it was just, it was amazing. I mean, anything that I worried about never happened. I feel like he protected. In fact, it was just the opposite. I mean, he called me one night, and I was like, we were going to do reshoots, and I was sitting in my hotel room, the old Mayflower Hotel in New York, and I answered the phone. I said, hello. And he goes, Allison, don't panic. And I said, well, the only thing that I'm worried about is I want to rehearse with Illeana and Matt tomorrow. And I said, so do you think it would be terrible of me? I was going to say to let the first AD shoot the inserts of the diaphragm hitting the ceiling, things like that. And he was like, but I didn't even get that far. I said, do you think it would be terrible of me? And he goes, oh, no, I'll do it. And I go, oh, okay. So I said, oh, thank you. So then I hung up, and then again it was like, wait a minute. Did he just say he's going to direct my inserts? Martin Scorsese's going to direct my inserts so that I can work with the actors? I mean, very generous. And he did my ADR in New York. I mean, so that I could be back in LA with my son. And
yes.
I mean, it's just kind of amazing.
He was very involved. The one issue that we disagreed on was the extension, because as we were making the film, this is my recollection, and as we were approaching the ending, it just suddenly, for me anyway, I said, I feel like she ends up with Eric Stoltz, or she ends up with John Turturro, and Marty was like, you're not going to have a happy ending. She ends up alone,
Well, and originally, remember, I had her
who are you
ending
tell
up.
Me I'm going to end up alone.
See, this is it.
And guess what? She ended up alone. But I didn't know that. That took 20 years.
Here we are. Well, and we were gonna. She was gonna end up with the guy that left. With his family and all of that.
Yeah.
And I remember him telling me one day, he goes, this guy's never going to leave his wife. He's Catholic. He's never leaving his wife. He meant the character, but it was based on, in my head, someone in my life. So I was like, he's never going to, she's wild. He's not like that. He's very, very conservative in a lot of ways. He's not, he had this all like down.
Right.
So he didn't know anything about who this was for me or anything, but he's like, he's never going to leave that marriage. And I go, it could happen. It could have. And he's like, no, he's not coming back at the end. He's not. And I was like, so I was determined though. You remember we shot it.
Yeah.
We shot it with we shot the scene.
Yeah, with Bruce.
Yeah, with Bruce on the cliffs.
Yes.
And even when I was watching you with the little girl, with little Luma, I was watching you on the sand and watching you look up at him, and I thought, oh God, Marty's so right. It's really not gonna.
See, I always felt, this became the movie within the movie. I became so close with Eric Stoltz. I just adore him, And and we have to get to that story too.
He's so
Bridget
great.
Fonda and how Peter Fonda got in the movie. But I just so adored him, and I thought our relationship was so interesting and organic. And
It really was.
The way that could a partnership go through this cheating, and then maybe wouldn't that be different to see that in a movie? And he just was such a calming person for me, because again, you know, so much of going on in behind the scenes, and he just seemed like a student of the movies. He just seemed so calm, and I was thinking, well, she should end up with him. You know, I kept trying to end up with someone.
Yeah.
And Marty was like,
know.
no.
I know. It just kind of, maybe it would have worked with Bruce too. I don't know. It's kind of, it's a weird thing.
Yeah, so we disagreed about that, and we disagreed about very strongly about the mother, the woman who played Christina Pickles. Who, do you remember the audition? You remember Jane Greer actually?
Oh, I know. Wasn't that amazing?
Jane Greer from Film Noir came in and auditioned for Grace.
Jane Greer, and then the other woman that had been in
Bigger Than Life.
Yes.
We kept trying to think if we could use them,
fantastic.
but they were both so old.
I know.
And of course,
Jane Greer was so sweet.
Yeah, she was lovely. So we we did a very long semi sort of improvisational scene with Christina Pickles, which did not make it in the movie, and I was kind of heartbroken because that was, I thought, a foreshadowing to the pool scene. And sometimes, you know, when you have a movie, you go, well, she really went off the rails. And then you go, well, you know, I had 5 or 6 other scenes that were leading up to that.
Yeah.
And to me, the mother scene was, because that was...
I really grieved that scene.
Yeah. And neither one of us in the post-production could convince Marty to put those scenes in the movie. And so that was my only lingering guilt about I always felt like I was in the middle, like I was the actor, I was there on set, and I was trying to honor the filmmaker who I had great respect for, and also try to, you know, honor another filmmaker.
Oh, I know.
You know,
yeah,
and
same here.
And so I always found that to be a challenge, and I always thought it would be, you know, wonderful again to kind of put, because again so much of the movie is autobiographical, and because of the way your career has gone on and my career has gone on, Marty's career has gone on, how it was, the way we all came together at that moment would be interesting to find those scenes and put them in. Also, again, the extended scene with Eric Stoltz, which, you know, Marty and Thelma, we had a screening, and they said to me, "Do you see how it doesn't work?" And I was like, "No, I love it." I remember they were so
I love that
they were
too.
so mad at me. It was like I was, because I thought that she, as a woman, which is what I love so much about Gas Food Lodging and your other films, she blurred the lines between her men.
Yes.
They were very blurry. She couldn't ever really let go.
And that is what it's like. I mean, she did go back to him for comfort when the other guy left. And you know what? I'm sitting here thinking, sorry, I know that we're doing, you know, we're doing this for an audience, but
yes.
I'm thinking I'm having revelations while we're talking, which is that mother scene. See, I think that the ending bothers the hell out of me, that the mother's looking at the album cover, proud of her daughter.
Right.
And the problem was, in the test screenings, people were like, where's the mother? What happened to the mother? Because she had made such an antagonistic impact in the opening. So without that scene that you're talking about with her, see, then I wouldn't have needed to put in that last scene, which doesn't work. That mother was never going to be proud of her. She's just too self-involved, and the daughter is not what she, you know, she's not anyone she even relates to. Yeah. So, you know, it's, and that was clear in that scene that you did with Christina, which was such a good scene. Yes. And it was a great looking scene too. I remember. I mean, you you had on those great clothes, and you looked so beautiful, and the setting was so beautiful, the production design, and
all of our
we got to put it back in.
We're going to put it back in. Okay, we're running out of time. We haven't even spoken about the idea of the music and how that was such a revolutionary idea that you had to bring in these older songwriters with new songwriters. At one point, I remember you were trying to get Madonna with Leslie Gore. Wasn't that the
Madonna and Ellie Greenwich?
Oh, and Ellie Greenwich.
And funny enough, it was the Ellie Greenwich camp that was being difficult, not Madonna. It was like they were like, "Well, you produce Madonna, and we'll produce Ellie." And I was like, "Well, we got Madonna. I mean,
you had everybody.
It's so weird.
You had everybody. At one point, wasn't it like a heartbreak? You had to turn down Brian Wilson.
I did because they came into the picture too late, and I already had these Jay Masca songs, and
we need a sequel.
There was a couple of people like that I didn't get their songs in. Grace Slick came in and was my idol, as a girl, and that's another one of my idols was Grace Slick, big time.
Yeah.
And still is. And but we did get her daughter in the movie.
Yeah, got her daughter who looks just like her. Chris Isaac makes a fantastic appearance. Larry Klein, genius, who then went on to work with him also.
Genius, just a genius. So good on camera, and just a brilliant producer for those songs.
Yeah, and then we had tell the story about how Mick Fleetwood was going to be in the film.
Oh my God! Okay, so
he even visited the set.
Yes, I think he did. So Mick Fleetwood was going to be this guru in Topanga because he also lived he raised his family in Topanga, and then he was getting married the weekend before before we were going to shoot with him.
Yeah.
And his father-in-law had a heart attack and died, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Right at the wedding.
Oh my God.
So really bad for them, really sucked for us.
Yeah.
Because he was now unavailable. And so Bridget Fonda, Dad was in town, Peter Fonda. I mean, what a trip. So the trip, right?
Yeah, the trip.
So I said,
Pal
oh my
Dennis
God,
Hopper.
thank you for doing this. And he goes, it's all right, Allison. I'm always good to work for free food.
Yeah.
And he told me the story. He says, sometimes I'll see a movie crew and I'll just go up and get in line with my tray. And he says, and people are like, I didn't know Peter Fonda was in this movie.
He is for lunch anyway.
And he was incredible. I was in awe of him. I mean, I couldn't believe.
Was so great.
But he was funny, and again, he was in the movie in a longer scene. But Marty, he sort of felt it was too funny. And again, I thought it was a much needed respite.
Boy, I did too.
Post the pool scene.
And it leads up to that scene with in the garden when Joel returns, and it would have been really would have been fun.
I know. I would have liked to have seen. Well, again, when we do the criteria,
there we go.
We're going to put all of that. So some of your movies that you did Sugartown, you returned to kind of more indie. Filmmaking with Sugartown and Things Behind the Sun, and I mean, although that was for HBO or
no,
Showtime?
It was actually made as an independent film, and then we sold it to Showtime.
I see.
Yeah.
And working in a more sort of, especially Sugartown, but that went to Sundance also.
That went to but Things Behind the Sun did not. But oh no, it did. That's where we sold it. Yeah. So so both of those went to Sundance, So with Sugartown, it was made on like $400,000. Like we wrote the script in a week. 3 weeks later we were shooting. I mean, it was kind of amazing.
Wow.
We got the financing and we're shooting.
So one of the things that is so great about you, which we sometimes see other filmmakers where they make such a big splash and then they kind of lose their footing or they're not able to work anymore, but you've been consistently working for the 20 years that I've known you. And what do you, that's kind of my last question, just in terms of the Trailblazing Women show, which you have been on. And
so good.
You know, how do you do it? how have you found it yourself to be consistently working both in television and in films?
Well, I think that, you know, it's funny because after Things Behind the Sun, I honestly didn't know what was going to happen, you know, but I had luckily just started doing TV. And the very first TV show I did, blessedly, thank you God, was Sex and the City. And so, which still pays my bills. I did 4 episodes, still pays my bills. I mean, that was that was a good move. So that show kind of got me into the TV world, you know, and so I could sort of, I didn't totally embrace it at first, the TV directing, and it's a little bit of an odd thing because it kind of feels like what you do when you make your own movie, but it's kind of not.
Right.
Because you're servicing the vision of someone else,
right.
you know, and you must do that. You absolutely can't service your vision. You can bring your experience to it, and you can bring your skill set, but you really have to service someone else's vision on TV. So that's been interesting. I mean, it's great because if you're not doing TV, I don't know how you're keeping abreast of all the technology and all the new toys and stuff there is to work with and all the new talent and, you know.
Right.
And so it's a blessing, you know, and I just keep going with it, you know, and it's kind of it's been good. It's been really good. And now my kids are all good, grown. My daughter's a brilliant music supervisor. I have grandchildren from the other 2, and
I know life is good.
Yeah, it's good.
And we go on and on. Well, Allison, thanks so much for being here. Please come back anytime. And
Thank you.
It's been wonderful. You can find Allison on Facebook. The link to her Facebook page will be on our website, which is illeanaspodcast.com. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
Also, go out and buy Illeana's book, I Blame Dennis Hopper. It's available in bookstores and on Amazon. Also, like our Facebook page and check out our website. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, and as I always say, everyone's life is a movie. Mine was a movie. Is a movie. With a beginning, a middle, and an end, and this is sadly the end of our show, but please come back. I adore you. You know.
I adore you too.
I love you. Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good day. Bye.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network. The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.